People from around the world gather here in Wales to take on one of the hardest mountain running races in the world.
The credit belongs to the one who is actually in the arena. All we can have, shall we have, in the castle this morning. Whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. Hopefully not too much blood this week. Paramedics can sort you out and put you back together.
Well, I first heard about the Dragon's Back race when I was procrastinating at work and reading those lists of the top 10 hardest races in the world. And the Dragon's Back race kept popping up.
I'm not really sure where I first heard about the Dragon's Back race. I think that first edition, 1992, attained almost a legendary status. But when it was repeated in 2012, one of my clubmates ran it, Matt Davis, and his stories were pretty exciting to listen to. So I signed up.
The 2012 Dragon's Back was really quite an experience. It was the first time I'd done anything more than 2 days, and I really wasn't prepared for the sheer, well, both the distance and the climb, and how relentless it can be day after day.
It's a really fun adventure, Dragon's Back, but you also need to be diligent about being focused on getting to the finish line and getting your little dragon.
How can I put into words what running the Dragon's Back race is like? It truly lives up to its title, the world's toughest mountain race. It has to be one of the hardest races I've ever taken part in.
The ruggedness and the remoteness of the route, as well as it's a self-navigating route, so you hit a bunch of points, A, B, C, and you can get there any way you want. Led a whole nother aspect of racing, a whole bunch of strategy that was so fascinating to me. And I think the pure difficulty of the race was probably the most interesting thing to me. It's a race I didn't know if I could finish, and that is immensely attractive.
I've done the Dragon's Back in 4 times now, 2012, well, all the modern era, 2012, 2015, 2017, 2019. And I keep going back because it's a different challenge every time. I think 2012 was really for the experience, for the challenge, and could I complete it? And you look at that course, you look at that race, it's such an inspiring journey to travel. But also, when you look at the figures from the original Dragon's Back, way back in, I don't know when it actually was, about 20 years before, the dropout numbers of really good athletes was very high. And we saw that again in 2012. I think it's probably a bit easier now as people have sort of worked out and figured out how to train for it. But initially it was just the challenge. Then in 2015, I wanted to go back and try and compete. I guess 2017 was more about could I demonstrate that 2015 wasn't a fluke. And 2019, I was back just to enjoy the experience.
I think being quite scared about the prospect of Dragon's Back really helped with my training. I really dedicated most of the previous year to my training, and in that way I think that really helped. And although I maybe didn't need to worry quite as much as I did, I think it really kicked me into doing quite a lot of specific training.
I think the big lesson I learned in 2012 was that you can feel pretty terrible on a morning and still get up and go again, and your body sort of gets going, and after a few miles, once you've worked through those initial tough few miles, you start to find it gets back to not quite normal, but not far off normal again. So you can keep going. And that very much informed my training for 2015. I was doing huge days back to back on a regular basis, which helped me, I think, get more resilient to training under that load, but also when it came to racing, it felt very normal to go out and do another big day. And I'd done a huge amount of climbing, and at the time I was working in Newcastle. I was working long hours, so I did most of my climbing, or not most, but certainly half of my climbing, or more of my intense climbing in the gym. And I was just going to the gym using a treadmill and doing VKs 3 nights a week, where I would just do them basically as fast as I could cope with, on a treadmill set at maximum height gain. I think they thought it was a bit crazy, but it certainly built the strength for just keeping moving up those long climbs. And then I would be out big days in the hills on the weekend.
You have to train for the race. You cannot go in to the Dragon's Back race not having done any specific training for it. It is a race that will truly find any weakness that you have.
So I think the best experience you can have going into the Dragon's Back race is just lots of long days out on kind of technical hills, really. So for me, I'd done quite a lot of the long classics races in the Lake District and in Scotland. And I think that was a really good experience. Also, some of the sort of 2-day mountain marathons where you have to navigate and also carry kit, because obviously on the Dragon's Back you'll be carrying more kit than you would usually do during a standard kind of short race. So yeah, lots of long days out on the hills, and be that hiking or running.
So I think the best thing I did to train for the Dragon's Back is just spending as much time as I could on the course and out in Wales on recce weekends. I was quite lucky to have a good group of friends who were also taking part in the race. So we spent loads of weekends on the course as much as we could. And it just felt like a lot of fun and a good excuse to be out in the mountains as much as possible. I think recce's are probably the best thing that I did. It doesn't just help navigationally, so you don't have to concentrate on where you're going so much during the course, but also that it really helps mentally, because you know there's a hill coming up so you can eat something, or when it's getting a little bit tough, you start looking forward to places that you've been before. So, oh, this is this part where we ate our sandwiches, or where we sang that song, or where so-and-so fell over, and you start looking forward to those little memories and those little sections of the course that you have something fond attached to.
I think physically it takes a level of fitness and stamina, an ability to spend long days out in the hills and replicate that day after day. I think that's difficult for lots of people who don't have access to hills, but there are ways around that. But it's definitely a level of hill fitness, and long hill fitness is what's required. I think what comes with that is the ability to care for yourself on a multi-day event.
It's really important as well to think about your campcraft as well, your bagmen, what you do as soon as you finish. To be successful at Dragon's Back, you've got to look after your recovery as well. You've got to get that recovery right. So as soon as you finish, getting dry clothes on, getting food in, and then getting a good amount of sleep each night as well. Without that, your body's going to break down even quicker and you're going to struggle.
I would come in at the end of a stage and just want to relax, because we had absolutely spectacular weather. The food is amazing, so all I would do is go to the food tent and start eating like crazy. And the next thing I know, it's almost nighttime, it's dinner time, I haven't sorted my stuff yet. So I quickly learned that I need to stop faffing about so much and actually get my kit sorted for the next day, get the nutrition sorted, look over the stage for the next day, the route. As it was navigational, I was trying to see if there were any shortcuts I could manage the following day. But really, it's just not faffing about so much, but it was so easy because there's so many great people to talk to and food to eat.
I guess mainly I really enjoyed the first 2 days because they're probably the most mountainous. I enjoyed kind of scrambling over Crib Goch, and I enjoyed the day in the Rhinogs. We had a fantastic day, and it actually ended with ice creams because there were ice creams waiting for us at the camp that night, which is a lovely memory.
Crib Goch is most exhilarating, scary and fantastic experience that you can roll into one. Some days I think it's best when you can see it and you can appreciate all the views, and some days I think it's brilliant when it's claggy because you don't know what you're going to fall off on the other side. Day 2 starts heading up the little hill of Connect, and then it kicks your arse in the Mollwins before presenting you with the Rhinogs in the afternoon. It's almost like you take a step away from the busyness of the Snowdonia National Park and step back into a bit of more remote Wales. I think day 2 is possibly my most favourite running mountain day ever.
The first day in 2017 was amazing. There were some really good athletes there. Neil Talbot springs to mind, who's a top-notch fell runner, and when I set off, I felt nervous but very quickly settled in and just had an amazing day running. It doesn't happen very often, but it was totally effortless, and I ended up with having a great day out. Really enjoyed myself, was running on my own for most of the day, and ended up with a significant lead at the end of the day, and against good athletes. And that's one of those few days where that ever happens to you, I think, as an athlete, and will stick with me for a long time.
Well, the Dragon's Back, compared to other races, it ranks up there with like the sheer epicness of Tor des Géants and UTMB. However, where it differs is it really has an unbelievable sort of sense of community. You set off at the top of Wales with about 600 runners, event organizers, and volunteers, and you move your way down Wales over about a week, and it's just such an epic experience where you experience the highs and the lows, and there was really, really tough times with all these other runners, and then you can share the experience at night over meals. And when you get to do that day after day, you see the same runners out there, you see new people that you meet and have a chat with, and you can instantly encourage and you can relate to things that you've done together. And so having that kind of community feeling was absolutely spectacular.
To choose a highlight from the Dragon's Back would be nearly impossible. I mean, it's 20 days of running on an amazing course with some amazing people. You know, the group of us that ran 2012 and largely stayed together, I spent 4 days, or best part of 4 days, running with Helene Whitaker, who's a legend of the sport. I met people like Joe Faulkner, another legend of the sport. And then the racing in 2015, where I got to know Jasmine and Conrad really well, who we've gone on to do other races together. We did the PTL together last year. These are all big highlights, and that happens at every event. You meet somebody new, so the people are a big draw.
I think I enjoyed myself so much. I think that really helped me run as quick as I did. So day 5 kind of threw me, having to do the racing start, because it kind of kicked me into having to think about it as a race. I get really bad race nerves, so I wasn't sure whether that was going to play to my advantage or I was just going to crumble. Luckily I had some really nice chats with my tent mates, and they just sort of talked me into being sensible and just doing what I've been doing all along, just run for myself and enjoy it.
I had an awesome adventure, a wonderful holiday, and it had a brilliant ending for me.
I find it really hard to sum up in words what it's like to run the Dragon's Back race, but it truly is an extraordinary race that gives you the opportunity to really push your boundaries, but also to explore an amazing part of Wales.
So yeah, it was a very, very strange experience, and afterwards, I mean, it was incredible. I really didn't expect to win, and I just think I'm so proud of myself for that achievement, and I just had a great time at the event in general.
The community feeling of it was spectacular. It's something that I'll never forget. I think it was totally unique to the Dragon's Back.
The camaraderie that's there, the friendships you build, and every single race I've built friendships that endure to today, and the people you meet. It's not just the other competitors, it's the events team, it's the catering staff. We're having a lot of fun, and it's something that keeps drawing me back in, I guess.
And it's fun to do things when you don't really know whether you can complete it or not.